Shanawdithit, A Beothuk Story is a film about Aboriginals.
In this film, Shanawdithit is from one of the Beothuk tribes in Newfoundland.
Throughout the film, she's sharing her experiences with William Cormack so he can collect this information.
It's always been a story we kind of wanted to tell. It's a very challenging film to try to make.
It is a film that is meant to help differentiate the colonial history that we've all been taught and to teach us who Shanawdithit really was and her importance in Indigenous history. This film came to be from one of the students and a very close friend of mine, Halen Pittman.
The story of Shanawdithit and the Beothuk as a whole has always been super important to me. And when trying to think of kind of a historical piece that we could tell for the intercession film, I thought, what better than the story of Shanawdithit and the last few of her people that we know about.
Because we were doing the story of Shanawdithit, we definitely needed to hire an Indigenous filmmaker. That was a must.
When he first came to our program several years ago, it didn't take me very long to realize that he was going to be a great director.
Eric is the perfect person.
With this story in particular, it was very important that we did our due diligence and did the proper research that we needed.
We're going back to 1829. Not an easy task.
So we've been talking to archaeologists, we've been talking to Indigenous leaders. The whole research group has been gathering data and documents for the last 6 months.
You know, then in terms of what we interpret from that, we have to be very careful, right? A lot of what we think of those maps or whatever are what Cormac wrote down, right? So I mean, some of that could be wrong, for all we know, you know.
We had meetings with groups like the Beothuk Institute, and every piece of information we were given impacted the story in some way.
We even talked to Chief Michelle Joe, the man who went to the UK to bring back the remains of the Mastwit and no Savassit.
Well, if you're going back and doing research, you'll find all the writings that's been done has been written by colonizers, including...
In doing the research that we did, we found that there was so much information and so much misinformation about the Beothuk people and their history.
Growing up, we were always taught that Mary March was the last Beothuk, and through our research, it became clear very soon that she was not, in fact, the last Beothuk. The last one that we know about that's been documented is actually her niece, Shanawdithit.
There are groups out right now who are researching the ancestry of the Beothuk and people who are today in this world that may have Beothuk ancestry.
When I was in high school, all I learned about the Beothuk was that the Europeans came, they found these savages, and then they all died of tuberculosis because they weren't immune to it. End of story. That's all I learned.
For the longest time, the story told in high schools across the province was that the Mi'kmaq were brought over to kill the Beothuks by the Europeans. That's what was being told to children.
I was so impressed with the amount of research that went into this project.
I'm glad that our team reached out to Indigenous people and associations to get our Indigenous side of the story.
One of the main appeals of producing a period piece is the production design.
As the art director, the research gave me a ground zero to build the world through the art.
As we were having these meetings about the script, I would often think about how the bigger elements would fit into the design of the film.
Originally, we had gun stocks from our trip to STF. But sadly, our attempts to build a gun from scratch fell through. In our search through our props closets, we actually found a prop gun, so I repainted it to fit the era. It is one of my favorite pieces.
Well, design elements that had to be sort of considered to make sure the set looked like it existed in the 1800s was stuff like half the wall is just sort of wainscoting all the way across, and then stuff like the sconces, right, like lighting on the walls. They're like glass jars with candles in it. The wooden framing around the windows. These are the elements that really bring together the older feeling of the house.
For the Beothuk, what we found out was that their clothing came in different pieces. So they would have a sleeve piece, they would have leg pieces, and the cloakish piece would be tied on with a belt. Galen Buckle is a treat to work with. We had to hire on a master seamstress to build the Beothuk clothing. She's super positive, and she's been a seamstress for a very long time, and she was very quick to modify the Beothuk costumes for whatever we needed.
The production design on this film was absolutely incredible. The students went at it with a vengeance.
How do I feel about the cast as a whole? Just thinking about that question, I'm getting shivers.
Our two leads for this film were Violet Cummings as Shanawdithit and Andrew Hibbets as William Cormack.
Working with Andrew was very fun. Me and Andrew, from the very first time we met at the first rehearsal, we clicked immediately, and I remember being very nervous coming into it, and he was just so funny and accepting and really made me feel a lot more comfortable.
There were so many points during filming that I was actually blown away by her talent. I remember at one point when we filmed a particular scene, after she finished and we cut, everybody just erupted into applause at her performance. I mean, it was so genuine and so heartbreaking.
I thought I had instigated the clap. Eric thought he had instigated the clap. And Keith, who was in a completely different room, thought he had instigated the clap.
She had 22 words total, and somehow she expressed so much character and so much personality. I genuinely don't think we could have had a better actress for the role. With Andrew Hibbets, he took direction incredibly well, and he brought the ambiguity that I was looking for to the film.
I can't say enough great things about Eric. He was really a comfort. It was incredible to listen to what he had envisioned for this movie.
With Sims, I wanted sort of a little cameo. I wanted to get the previous Intercession director, John McKinnon, because he was also the director for me when I was in film school.
I played Attorney General Sims in the film, and I am in charge of bringing Shanawdithit to William Cormack. I'm a no-nonsense type character, had a lot of fun playing it, and yeah, it was truly a great experience.
He brought more anger than I anticipated, but like, I think it worked. John really encapsulated the mentality of a colonial man at that time in history. With the other actors we had, Ian Locke and Julia Blanchard, they brought very strong performances to one of the most emotionally taxing scenes in the entire thing.
That scene was just so emotional, and the performances by Ian Locke and by Julia Blanchard, just amazing.
All around, just a perfect cast. Like, are you feeling good? Do you think you might be good to do a take now?
Sure.
Working with Eric White was also amazing. He always made me feel so comfortable and like I was like a Hollywood star or something.
I'm so glad we hired Eric for this film, and he did a stellar job.
Yeah, it was very, very special to watch Eric go from the student to now the teacher, and for me to get to witness that, I'm very, very proud of him, and it was really special to see.
Watching Eric direct was a real thrill. Never once did I see him get rattled, and the actors just love him.
And this is a wrap on Violet.
That's a wrap on the 2023 Intercession Film.
If there's one thing to testament why this film got made, it's the students and their passion and their drive and their work ethic. Because without it, the film wouldn't have been finished.
They also took this extremely serious. The students realized the importance of this story. They realized the importance of getting it right.
Every student stepped up to the plate, and it was just remarkable how well they worked together.
Working on the Intercession film was really fun. I learned a lot and spent a lot of time with some great people, and overall it was a good experience.
Some of my favorite moments were during our lunch and supper breaks, where we talked about the weirdest things, laughed like we had no care in the world, and just being goofy.
My experience working on the Intercession film was a bit tiring and stressful, but I really enjoyed working with the crew. I feel like we worked together really well, and overall it was a pretty fun experience.
Being a student, it's very nice to have a whole crew of other students, and we all are learning things to do in the industry when we get out there for the roles we are provided.
I actually learned a lot. I was the boom operator. I work with the sound mixer, which is Haley and Keith. They show me a lot of stuff which I won't actually learn in class.
I think what the digital filmmaking program in Stephenville does, no other film school in Canada can do what they do.
Travis, the compositor, he had a lot to do.
And I apologized to him in advance multiple times for what I had in store for him, because he had his work cut out for him.
It might not seem like an overly complex film when it comes to the post-production side of things, but it really is.
When Peter Buckle mentioned that there were going to be some VFX in this film, I offered to work with Travis Lucas, one of the students, to kind of develop those effects with him and oversee his work.
The intention behind the wide shot of the camp was to make the camp seem bigger than it actually was. So we had our camera guy up on a high platform. We'd roll the camera and we'd leave it roll for the whole duration. And then what would happen is myself and 4 other people would then get up, grab the mammoth tape, and then move it to the next third. And then we'd position everybody for the next third. And then we'd shoot that, and then we'd do it again.
Going, okay, stop.
So in post-production, what I did was I would have taken all 3 of those shots and then stitched them together.
We had to recreate a scene from downtown St. John's in the time. So I've been working with Travis, but also my co-workers, Aaron and Dave, to construct buildings and that are appropriate for that period.
With the St. John's composite shot, Peter had set up a monitor so that it looked like the houses were there when we were shooting. We take the shot and we put it in 3D software, and we have to now add the houses around them.
The perspective for these buildings has really got to match well, because if anything is slightly off, then you're going to look at the buildings and not the actors, and we don't want that.
We have to composite a couple of campfires. We have to deal with a fireplace. There's a whole lot of just cleaning up, like tape on the floor. You're going to paint that out. So as these shots come together, there's a real feeling of satisfaction.
When the audience watches it, hopefully they don't see any of it.
The importance of this film is to help share the story of the Indigenous people and get their story out, especially about the Beothuk, many people don't know much about.
It tells the story of the Beothuk people, which is essentially a story that has been lost to time.
It's now more relevant than ever. When we're looking at truth and reconciliation, I think we need to take a look back.
I think just the fact that there's so much misconceptions about the Beothuk story as a whole, I think that makes for a really interesting piece.
This film is important because it was made with passion and with the intent to educate people on a very important history in Newfoundland.
It's a story that needed to be told, and telling it through the art of filmmaking is such a wonderful way to do it.
It is important to tell the story of Beothuk. A lot of people don't know. We're actually trying to tell them what happened in 1800.
This movie serves as a reminder of us as a society responsibility in confronting the consequences of colonization, so we can foster a better future, so we can try to build a more inclusive future.
So when you're looking at the Beothuk people, for many there is a giant hole in knowledge and emptiness, and this film is an entry point into that knowledge to unpack it.
It is also really important to me because I know for a fact that there are certain indigenous communities in Nigeria that have been through similar ordeals.
This has happened in other places. This has happened all around the world.
I think learning about the Beothuk is the primary way of showing respect.
It's about time we actually got to hear the other side of history.
I think time and time again, with all these colonial tragedies throughout history, we always see this element of negligence. Because even when there is good intentions on behalf of the colonizers, we still somehow always end up in the same place of the downfall of a people.
This story is very important to tell for multiple reasons, obviously. One, so history doesn't repeat itself, but also to give the Beothuk and Shanawdithit specifically a voice.
In general, I think Canada has a lot of dark stories that still need to be told. We're just scratching the surface.
Even though I'm not a Beothuk person, I'm Mi'kmaq, I get to help to spread Indigenous and Aboriginal culture. So to say that this film means a lot to me, I think is an understatement.